Hey everyone, and welcome to Boston Autoblog. When we take a look at the crossover markets, they have evolved quite a bit over the last 10 to 15 years, where they were once known as just being practical, great daily drivers, and perfect point A to point B vehicles for people with families. Today, they're known to be much more than that. We have vehicles like the Lamborghini Urus, Audi SQ8, BMW X5M, X3M, the list just goes on and on. We're talking vehicles that have V8s and V6s under the hood, and they're also really fun to drive and own. But who was the main culprit that started all of this? Because the Germans are going to get all the recognition with the BMW X5 and also the Mercedes-Benz M-Class. And really, I think when you look at the sportback designs, everyone's just going to point to the BMW X6. However, in my opinion, it was the Infiniti FX35 back in 2002 and 2003. That was the first vehicle of its kind that had a sportsback-like rear end and also a vehicle that looked really fun and also very aggressive. Some would argue that Infiniti has kind of lost their identity as of late compared to where they were back in the mid to late 2000s. And really back then, they were a very intriguing brand with a list of fun vehicles in their lineup. But today, I'm happy to report that I think they're back on track with the all-new 2022 Infiniti QX55, which is based on the QX50. This is a trend we're seeing a lot in the automotive industry right now, like the BMW X3 and X4, also the Mercedes-Benz GLC and GLC Coupe, and this is Infiniti's interpretation of this trend. But also it's great to see that Infiniti is back to this design as they are really the founders of this segment. When we take a look at Infiniti's closest competitors like Acura and Lexus, there's one thing they're lacking: a fun and engaging crossover that's drawing in an enthusiast demographic, or at the very least, younger consumers. But take a look at the side profile of the QX55. Look at the body lines, look at the angles. This is just something we don't see from non-European brands, and I am absolutely loving what I'm staring at right now. So in this video, we're going to take a good long look at the 2022 QX55, see how it compares to other vehicles in its segment, and also see why, if you're looking at buying a new crossover that also has sports car-like design qualities, then maybe going with the QX55 might be a great decision. Now, before we get in this video, I want to give a huge shout out and thank you to Infiniti of Norwood in Norwood, Massachusetts, for allowing me to do this review. I also want to give a huge thank you to Adam, the general manager of Infiniti of Norwood, for letting me take the QX55 out for the entire day to fully experience this vehicle. Their link will be in the description below, so you can check out their extensive Infiniti inventory. And so, without wasting any further time, let's get right in this review. For a while now, all our attention in the luxury market has been focused on what the Germans are doing, as they're single-handedly taking over every segment in the automotive industry. As a result, some manufacturers have been forgotten about, like Infiniti, which really hasn't created any buzz with their vehicles, even after their drastic changes to their alphanumeric nameplates. Even though most enthusiasts and journalists would look at this Japanese brand as being small, they have a bigger product line than Acura, but still find themselves in the shadows of their closest rivals. The all-new QX55 is here to hopefully change all of that with some retro designs, and a small glimpse of what this manufacturer is capable of, as for the first time in almost a decade, they've returned to being unpredictable and futuristic with their styling. Starting off with pricing, the Infiniti QX55 in this review is a Sensory, coming in at just over $57,000. With our model being a top trim, there's going to be a plethora of features to enhance the overall ownership experience, with most of these creature comforts being found inside, which we'll check out later in this review. Being based on the QX50, there's no surprise that dimensions don't change much, except for the roofline thanks to the sportback rear end. More importantly, despite appearing to be athletic and car-like, the QX55 still retains a ground clearance of 8.6 inches to outclass most crossovers in this segment, theoretically making it off-road worthy and at the very least capable of taking on snow-covered roadways. Where Infiniti is drawing a lot of praise is with the exterior design for the QX55, as the front fascia is bolder and more aggressive compared to the current QX50, which has a relaxed and reserved demeanor. Body lines are very sharp, giving this crossover a sporty and aerodynamic appearance that we normally don't see from vehicles in this segment, especially those that lean towards being luxurious rather than performance-oriented. Likely catching your eye will be the amplified grille design that's far more pronounced than its sibling. And rather than using one material to dominate the styling for the QX55, Infiniti used a perfect blend of chrome accents, brushed aluminum, and a subtle hint of gloss black that outlines the bottom portion of the front grille and also the fog light housings. Giving this vehicle an upscale look will be LED headlights with signature daytime running lights, and you'll also have LED fog lights to help illuminate dimly lit back roads. Moving over to the side profile, the Sensory will come standard with 20-inch alloy wheels, and while most buyers would likely prefer a smaller size for improved ride comfort, surprisingly the QX55 actually handles the imperfections in the road exceptionally well, and the suspension does an amazing job of softening the bumps to keep you secure and relaxed during longer drives. Adding some contrast and continuing on with the sport crossover theme is the gloss black side mirrors with turn signal indicators, to go along with blind spot detection for added safety. Then coming around to the back, for Infiniti enthusiasts, the return of a rounder rear fascia and a coupe-like design pays homage to the legendary FX35, which arguably put this brand on the map here in the US at a time when sports crossovers were in their infancy. Normally with a sportback rear end, the C-pillars and bylines just don't look that good compared to traditionally shaped crossovers. However, Infiniti kept everything looking smooth and streamlined, including the rear diffuser, which is painted to keep the plastic cladding to a minimum. Getting my attention during filming was the LED taillights, as the housings wrap around the rear third of the QX55 to make this crossover appear to be much wider than in reality. Not usually something I'd say with vehicles in this segment is just how photogenic the QX55 really is, as I couldn't find a bad angle, whether staring at the front, side, or rear. Under the hood, the QX55 is powered by a 2-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder engine that puts out 268 horsepower and 280 pound-feet of torque, and is paired with a CVT. Now before you roll your eyes at the fact that Infiniti isn't offering a true automatic, the CVT does a fantastic job of mimicking gear shifts to help keep you engaged behind the wheel, especially in sport mode, and we'll take a deeper dive into the driving dynamics when we take out the QX55 for a test drive. A welcoming sight for buyers who live in colder regions of the US, all-wheel drive does come standard for better year-round versatility. For fuel economy, you can expect to receive right around 22 miles per gallon in the city and 28 miles per gallon on the highway. Stepping inside, you get power adjustable heated and ventilated leather seats for both the driver and passenger, with the driver's side being 2-position memory for added convenience. The two-toned interior that is highlighted with the Monaco red inserts immerses you into a driver-centric cockpit that reflects the sporty exterior design and fun driving characteristics. You're going to notice that the dashboard is molded around you, providing a comfortable and safe environment while on long road trips. In front of you, between the analog gauges, you will have a digital display that's commonly found in most new Nissan-related products, giving you a good amount of information. But more importantly, resolution quality is what you expect to find in vehicles at this price point. To make driving safer, you will have a head-up display with traffic sign recognition and a digital speedometer to help keep your eyes on the road at all times. Moving over to the infotainment system, there will be a dual touchscreen setup, with the top screen being home to your navigation system and camera angles when parking the QX55 in tight spots. To the delight of most drivers, the coolest feature with this user interface is that when paired with the wireless Apple CarPlay, Google Maps and Waze will be showcased here, giving you the ability to multitask, as you can access iTunes or the radio, which can be found on the second touchscreen, without having to close out of Waze or the Google Maps app. It's the second touchscreen that is your main head unit, where you can scroll through different menus. Resolution and responsiveness are pretty impressive, with little to no lagging whatsoever. And for buyers looking for a traditional layout, you'll have quick access buttons found just below the head unit, and mounted on either side of the touchscreen will be the buttons for your dual-zone climate control, AC, front and rear defrosters, and 3-level heated and ventilated seats. For the center console, you'll find a cubby for your key fob, a USB and USB-C input, and a 12-volt outlet, which all can be hidden for a sleeker appearance. Closer to the passenger side, but still within arm's reach, is a rotary dial and buttons which control your navigation system and camera angles. For a center storage compartment, you'll have enough room for smaller items. And rounding out the front seating area, above will be a power moonroof to let in some natural light to the interior. Now for passengers in the back, we're going to start off on the passenger side, and the seat is adjusted all the way back, believe it or not, and somewhat on a recline. And I still have a few inches of legroom to work with here, which is pretty impressive because from the outside, the QX55 does seem to be pretty compact. But I think if you're on the height of 5'7" or 5'8", you could sit back here pretty comfortably. And of course, someone who's sitting in front of you might not adjust their seat all the way back. So this is just really great to see overall. Now, when it comes to headroom, of course, you'll be sacrificing a bit when it comes to that headroom just because we have a Sportback-like roofline. So if you're on maybe the height of 5'10", it might be a bit claustrophobic, but that's to be expected for a vehicle of this size. Now, for the center seat, the center hump isn't really that aggressive. It's actually a bit more thinned out, so there is some good placements for my feet. The biggest issue, though, of course, with any vehicle of this size is going to be shoulder room. And when it comes to compact crossovers, you just don't expect to be able to fit 3 average-sized adults in the second row, and that's exactly what I'm experiencing here. So if you had 3 kids, it might work, but anyone over the height of 5'5", I think is going to be quite the squeeze. And then on the driver's side, this seat is adjusted a little bit further up, and I have plenty of legroom to work with here. So pretty good stuff to see for a vehicle that is somewhat compact and has a Sportback-like roofline. There is a good amount of legroom to work with here. There's enough space. And as I say with a lot of compact crossovers, I think this vehicle is better suited for just 4 people overall and 2 people in the back, just because it would be very cramped back here when it comes to shoulder room. But overall, though, I think when it comes to seating positions and seating situations, it is pretty comfortable back here for sure. One really cool feature for the second row with the QX55, which you're not going to notice immediately, and I didn't either, is the fact that the second row seats are adjustable. They slide forwards and backwards, giving passengers extra legroom, or if you have no passengers back here, you can actually get more cargo space. So this is really great to see. We saw something similar to this with the Ford Escape, but to the best of my knowledge, there's no other luxury compact crossover on the market, at least from the European brands that I have featured so far, that gives you this amount of adjustability. So that's really awesome to see. It's great to see that Infiniti is focusing on giving passengers a comfortable environment as they are reclining in the second row. Also back here, we'll have 2 rear air vents to go along with a 12-volt outlet, USB input, and also climate control. So yes, we have 3-zone climate control in this crossover, which is great to see. And rounding out the rear seating area, you do get a center armrest with 2 cup holders. Now coming around to the back, for the power liftgate, the button will be found in the Infiniti emblem. And inside, you're going to find right around 27 cubic feet of rear cargo space. Now, you are going to sacrifice a bit by going with the Sportback roofline, and with the QX50, you're going to have around 31 cubic feet. So you're losing around 3 to 4 cubic feet of room. But to be honest, I don't think that's much of a sacrifice at all because the QX55 has a nice streamlined look to it. But to put everything into perspective and where it competes with other vehicles with a Sportback-like roofline, it actually outclasses the Audi Q5 Sportback by around 2 to 3 cubic feet of room. Then also, because I look at the QX55 as being a true competitor to the Alfa Romeo Stelvio, the Stelvio is going to have around 18 to 19 cubic feet. So overall, the QX55 is actually more practical than some of its closest competitors. Now, I think you could fit around 3 to 4 bags of luggage back here if you are going on a road trip with the family. It's very wide and very spacious, and I think it actually is more practical than what the number is on paper. So that's really great to see. Then with the second row seats folded, that space is going to right around double in size, and I think overall it's certainly more practical, or at least on par with most Sportbacks on the market. And really though, from the outside it's very deceptive because the QX55 does seem to be pretty compact and pretty small, but I think it does outcompete most vehicles in this segment. Then on either side of the rear cargo area, you will have quick release tabs to conveniently lower those second row seats. So if you're feeling a little lazy and don't really feel like manually lowering those seats, you can load everything up and be on your way. Also beneath the floor mat, you will find additional storage for some smaller items or for valuable items that you don't want people to see and possibly steal if you do leave this vehicle unattended. And then once you're done, just press the button and the lift gate will close automatically. So let's take the all-new Infiniti QX55 out for a test drive to see how it performs, how it handles, how it drives, and how it compares to other vehicles in its segment. Gets a decent punch, for sure. You definitely get up to speed pretty quickly. Now, of course, you do have a CVT, and the way Nissan and Infiniti have worked this CVT, it mimics gear shifts really well. It feels like a true automatic. One thing I do hope, though, is that in the future, because we're now seeing Nissan, at least with the Pathfinder, go with the 9-speed automatic, I want to see that in this crossover. I think having a true automatic would be very beneficial, but I like the fact that you don't get that droning from the CVT. It's just a very quick shifting vehicle. One thing that's really standing out to me immediately with the QX55 is that you have the body lines for the hood right in front of you. It kind of reminds me of the Alfa Romeo Stelvio, and it just looks really cool. The body lines that you can see through the side mirrors, even to the back, you feel like you're in a real sporty crossover, and I like that. That's very unique. Never seen that before for most vehicles that are not from Germany or Italy. You have a very beefy steering wheel too, with a very aggressive 10 and 2 positions. And overall, the interior comfort, I like it. It's actually a nicely designed vehicle on the interior. It has a very driver-centric feel as well. I love the red interior too. Infiniti Norwood made sure that we went with the red interior because I think it really pops, especially on camera. Another thing I like too is that we have dual touchscreens, so I can access my Apple CarPlay, what music I'm listening to, and also I can have the navigation system up at all times. That is really cool to see. I know some people don't like the dual touchscreen setup, but I think it actually adds a lot of value in this segment, especially where you don't want to be looking down at the infotainment system all the time while you're driving. I just like having the navigation system up at all times. So we are going to put the Infiniti Q55 in sport mode. What you are going to notice in sport mode is that the QX55 does become more agile and responsive in more ways than one, not necessarily when it comes to throttle response, but especially for steering. It becomes a lot more aggressive, but not in the sense of tightness in the steering, but rather it becomes very darty. So you can get in and out of lanes very quickly. It makes this crossover seem a lot more sporty, and to some degree, kind of reminds me of what we experience with Alfa Romeo. Alfa Romeo doesn't have a tight steering, but it's very direct, and that's what I'm experiencing with the QX55. So let's get on the highway here, see how the QX55 responds. And we are already up to 60. So when you're getting on the highway, you have enough power to get you safely on the road. You definitely have enough passing power for sure. And again, even with the CVT, it mimics the gear shifts really well. I'm pretty impressed because most CVTs really dull the driving experience. This is completely different. Kind of reminds me of what I experienced in the Nissan Rogue, although we have a more powerful engine here to work with. So the driving experience is a lot more engaging. Now, when it comes to front vision, you have plenty of it. Nice panoramic view. A-pillars are not very aggressive at all. Also, what I like is that the side mirrors are pretty big, so I can see what's in my blind spots. When it comes to the blind spot detection, you will have a little light on the A-pillar itself where the speaker is, and again, it just adds to that safety aspect. I cannot begin to describe how happy I am to see Infiniti get back in the Sportback game, because I think this looks really good. It has a striking road presence, and I have been getting some stares while I'm driving. It's pretty cool. You have a nice aggressive front fascia, and then also when it comes to the rear end, it just reminds me of the Alfa Romeo Stelvio. I think that's probably the closest competitor in terms of styling that the Infiniti QX55 has. I just think it looks really good. But also Infiniti was the first ones to really make crossovers enjoyable and make them cool with the FX35. And it was really sad seeing them go away from that. And to finally have a vehicle that is a modern iteration of that is so important. I really want to see Infiniti really go a little more in depth with the performance as well, even though we're probably never going to see a V6 like we did in the FX35. I would just love to see a lot more performance. That would just be something that I would love to see. Now, one thing that I can really appreciate about sport mode in the QX55 is that it doesn't feel numb, it doesn't feel manufactured or fake, because a lot of non-sports crossovers have sport mode and it just doesn't feel right. Yeah, the gear shifts get more aggressive, the engine becomes more responsive, but it just doesn't feel natural. It just doesn't feel right. Whereas with the QX55, I could keep it in this mode even in city driving and not get tired of it, not have the sense of, oh, I'm just done with sport mode. I'd rather have it back in comfort. But it does feel natural. It does feel sporty. And that's exactly what I want to see from a vehicle that has a sportback like rear fascia. I want to see that. But it's also important for Infiniti to have a vehicle that responds well, because it does go up against BMW, Audi, and Mercedes-Benz, also Acura and Lexus. And I think the driving dynamics is really crucial for this vehicle, because a lot of people, they may overlook and not really care about the technology aspect. I personally don't mind that. If the driving dynamics are good, if I can be engaged behind the wheel at all times, I don't care about a full digital gauge cluster. I don't need the best infotainment system. And what I'm experiencing right now behind the wheel of the Infiniti QX55 is a true fun sports crossover, and I'm actually really impressed, because I was expecting more of a numb feeling and a feeling in sport mode where I just rather have it in comfort mode, but actually it's in sport mode while I'm driving in the suburbs and I'm perfectly fine with this. That's not something I usually say about most crossovers. So point for Infiniti on that one. Also, when it comes to interior quality, I really like how quiet it is in here. And even in sport mode, the engine doesn't get louder. Yeah, they still pump in the audio, but it's nothing egregious. It's not like that feeling or that sound that you get in some crossovers where it's like, this isn't a sports car. I shouldn't be having the sound be pumped in that aggressively. So that's another thing I really can appreciate too, but also how quiet the interior cabin is. You don't get a lot of road noise, and that's really important, especially for a vehicle that's in the price range of around $50,000 to $60,000. But overall, it actually really is a nice crossover, and I don't know why. I had low expectations walking in, and I usually do this to myself. I walk into a vehicle with low expectations, and then it blows me away in more ways than one. And yeah, the QX55 really is impressive. I was not expecting this at all. It just rides well. And then the fact that I have it in sport mode in city driving or suburban driving is not something I usually do with crossovers that are not sports car oriented. So the fact that we have a vehicle that is trying to be luxurious but also a bit sporty, it's done that pretty well. I think it's balanced it out really well, and a lot of brands are having a hard time doing that. Because when you look at the traditional competitors that Infiniti goes up against, and we can even stick to just Acura and Lexus, they're really trying to insinuate that they're both a sporty brand and luxury brand. And I think they have a hard time doing that to a certain degree, because yeah, they need to be luxurious to compete with the Germans, but they also need to have that sports car factor as well, and it just doesn't balance out that well. Where I think Infiniti is doing a pretty good job here with the QX55, but also more importantly, I think a lot of people could argue, I want to see more technology, I want to see a digital gauge cluster, I want to see maybe a more eye-catching infotainment system. But I think if you can give us a vehicle that has great driving dynamics, that keeps us engaged behind the wheel at all times, then I think we can overlook the technology aspect. And right now, in the 20 to 30 minutes of driving this crossover, I have not thought about the technology at all. So that's pretty good. I like what Infiniti has done here with this vehicle. And selfishly, I would like to see a more powerful engine just to see what Infiniti is capable of in this segment. But after this test drive, I think buyers are going to be pretty impressed with what Infiniti has to offer right here. I think they're going to like the driving dynamics. They're going to like the steering for sure, very responsive. And I think they're also going to like the overall value that you receive here. Very comfortable interior. I do like the dual touchscreen setup, as I said before. And when it comes to the sport mode, it doesn't feel fake, it doesn't feel manufactured. This is a very comfortable vehicle overall, and I definitely recommend taking this vehicle out for a test drive because it is pretty impressive. So at the end of the day, what are my final thoughts for the QX55? And to be brutally honest, I'm getting Alfa Romeo Stelvio vibes with this crossover. And that is not a bad thing at all, because the Stelvio is known to have athletic and fun driving characteristics, even if you don't go with the Quadrifoglio. And that's exactly what I have here with the QX55. It's really fun to drive. And more importantly, and something that really stands out to me, is that when you put it in sport mode, it doesn't become more aggressive in terms of tighter steering. In fact, it becomes more agile and responsive. And it has steering that does remind me of the Stelvio. So it doesn't have that fake tight steering input. Instead, it feels more like a sports car, and I love that. Also, when it comes to the interior layout, it's very driver-centric, driver-focused, and even though some people say that they don't like the dual touchscreens and maybe there's some technological aspects that maybe is falling behind some of the German rivals, I can overlook that because this crossover is so fun to drive. I'm not focused on the lack of a full digital gauge cluster. I'm not even focused on the infotainment system. I'm actually fully involved while I'm driving, and I really appreciate that, especially where Infiniti is trying to make this vehicle sporty and engaging to drive, and they have certainly done that for sure. And it really has beaten my expectations in more ways than one, even though you look on paper, it has a CVT, and you're like, oh no, not a CVT. But when it comes to what Nissan and Infiniti offer, the CVT does mimic the gear shifts pretty well. It's not like Honda and Toyota, so I think you're going to overlook that. But I would like to see Infiniti give us a true automatic with the QX55, just because they're really trying to make this vehicle sporty and aggressive. And I think it would be very beneficial moving forward for the QX55. But really, though, I think if you are looking for a comfortable and luxurious crossover that's not going to break the bank when you're looking at German competitors, but also something that's fun and not boring to drive, then I think the QX55 is the crossover for you. So guys, thank you so much for watching this video. Please like, comment, share, and subscribe for more. Also, make sure to follow me on Instagram at Boston Autoblog so you can see what I'm up to and what vehicles I'll be featuring in the future. And I will see you guys next time.